Welcome back to the Piping Pastor Theology Talks. Today we'll be furthering our discussion of theological anthropology by taking a look at what the Imago Dei really means in relation to human consciousness and perhaps even a wee discussion on original sin. Well, it is an unseasonably warm day here in Maryland, so I've actually had to dig back into my fall wardrobe, which happily I have what is commonly referred to as a capsule wardrobe. So just a handful of suits and waistcoats and sport coats and shirts and so on and so forth. So I need only rotate out my winter wardrobe and my summer wardrobe. My spring and fall pretty much stay in rotation all year round. So I was able to dig out a cravat and an open collar because it is weirdly warm today in January here. And I am smoking out of my Meerschaum Church Warden again, which I'm really rather enjoying. I'm not trying to speed the color along. I'm just really enjoying smoking it. And in it, I am smoking Fusilier's Ration. I know I had indicated that I was going to try to stick to just straight Virginias or Virginia Periques for this particular pipe, because conventional wisdom in the pipe smoking world would have you believe that you need to have pipes dedicated to certain tobaccos. At the extreme end, you have like Mutton Chop Piper, who has a great channel, has 16 pipes for 16 different tobaccos in his rotation to avoid ghosting. But to my mind, I enjoy pipe smoking. For me, it's a contemplative thing. It's a relaxing thing. And if I want to choose a different tobacco to smoke in a different pipe because I particularly like this particular tobacco and I like this particular pipe, then, rules out the window. I'm just going to enjoy myself. You should do the same. So, human evolution. I mentioned in my talk on theological anthropology about the development of human consciousness and how that might relate to original sin. Now, with regards to the theological views on original sin, you have the Augustinian view and the Pelagian view. I discussed those in one of my poetry in the Bible videos, so I shan't belabor the point now. But for the purposes of this talk, we'll deal with the idea of original sin, that all human beings are born sinful. If you follow the young earth creation model, and your faith informs you that the earth is 9,000 years old and that Adam and Eve were literal people, you'd have a quick answer for that. Namely, they were forbidden to eat the apple, they ate the apple, boom, sin enters the world through one person, carries on from that person throughout all of humanity, with the exception of the incarnate form of God in Jesus Christ. And humans are created in the image of God in a very literal sense, that's what God looks like. We have the Calvinist view of the old white man with a long white beard sitting on a throne, judging people, that kind of thing. Or sometimes people will take that as humans are a model of the Trinity because we are mental, physical, and spiritual creatures. But that we are created thusly in the image of God. Now, if you do not follow that line of thinking and you adhere to the old earth creation model, and you follow what the plurality of mainstream scientists argue about the evolution of humanity, it gets a bit more complex for you. What does it mean that humans are created in the image of God? And what does that have to do with consciousness and the idea of original sin? Well, for that, we can look to the theological anthropology of Wolfhart Pannenberg. Pannenberg argued that humans did develop and evolve, but that the tasting of the apple, as it were, is not a singular event where we have the literal Adam and Eve in the garden eating the apple and gaining wisdom. The tasting of the apple, and thus the fall of humanity, is when humans' consciousness developed to the point where we could identify not only an other, but a divine other. You see, even animals can identify others, right? That's no specific grand leap of development in consciousness. But conceptualizing of a spiritual other, an other that is beyond physical existence, is unique to humans. This has been demonstrated throughout the progression of humanity, the evolution of humanity, through ritual play, through depictions of death rituals that we have in cave drawings, and so on and so forth. The idea that there is something else beyond what we can see, feel, hear, and touch. And it was at this point in humanity's development and progression that we gained divine knowledge. And it's at that point we go from being animals, we go from having nefesh hayah in an animalistic sense, living instinctively, to living, even communally, living instinctively, to living in and with and through a spiritual existence as well. And it's that ability, our ability to communicate with, in, and through the divine, through the function and the action of the Holy Spirit, that enables us to then reject that communication and then reject that direction, or to, in Luke's words, to blaspheme the Holy Spirit. And it's that gives us the ability to sin. Because you see, before that happened, before we had a conscious knowledge of a divine other, and we lived as animals live, there is no sin. There is no good or evil. We have the depiction of nature being red in tooth and claw, but is it evil when a lion kills an elk? No. Is it evil when I kill another human being? Yes. That's demonstrably evident. The lion kills the elk to eat it. Let's say that somebody has some food that I want. I'm not going to go the cannibalistic route because I think that's disgusting. But let's say somebody else has some food that I want. The only way for me to get it, to eat, is to kill them. Is it okay for me to do so? No, it's not. Because we're not dealing in a form of natural evil. Then we're dealing with someone with a higher level of developed consciousness, who is able to engage in that kind of behavior and therefore able to sin. And that is why we have humans being created in the image of God. You see, you can't say humans are created in the image of God in a physical sense. Not only because God, apart from the incarnate Christ, God is a spiritual being and therefore does not have, 2 arms, 2 legs, and a head. Secondly, if you were to try to make the argument that humans are created in the image of God, then how do you deal with humans with disabilities? Would you then try to argue that even if you're talking about our mental capacities, then is someone with limited mental faculties because of developmental disorder or because of a brain injury of some sort or hereditary disorder, are they then somehow less the image of God? No, of course not, because all humanity is created in the image of God. So there has to be something else beyond our physical construction, beyond our mental construction, and it lies in our ability to commune with the Most High in a spiritual sense. That higher level of communication that allows us to conceive of a divine other. been a great deal of research by people such as Lisa Miller and others, Nancy Murphy. There's a great deal of work in the Divine Action Project. If you want to look at this, Neuroscience in the Person, my friend and colleague, Sarah Lane Ritchie, has done a great deal of work with this as well. The development of human consciousness and spirituality. And then all hinges on the development of humans in an evolutionary sense. So if you recall, when I was putting forth the argument that we could think of human progression and human evolution in terms of building, right? Like God is building something over time, from our perspective, over time, from God's perspective, instantaneously. Then you can also see how the development of human consciousness could have come about in that same manner. So we go from animalistic and instinctive to the conception of divine other to divine spiritual communication, which continues to be refined. Which, of course, then you can think of, as I said, with the doctrine of original sin, if you want to look at it from that perspective as well. So we have human consciousness being developed in evolution, allowing us to choose right from wrong, allowing us to see communication and receive communication from a divine other in our physical selves. That represents the movement from animal to Imago Dei. That demonstrates the movement from nonverbal communication to written communication, verbal communication, and eventually spiritual communication. The idea of conceptual thoughts being put out into the world, and then our communication back and forth between the divine other. So we then, of course, have the difficult conundrum of how does that communication take place? Is it the pineal gland? Is that the joining of the physical and the non-physical? Is it something else? Are we talking about substance dualism, where we have a spiritual soul riding around in the car of our body? I would argue no. I would argue that we are physical, mental, and spiritual beings, all convergent, all at one time. In the Western world, we have a difficulty understanding that because we have this inherent idea of a separation between physical and spiritual. In order to have an enmeshed experience where physical, spiritual, and mental all exist as one, you have to go a little further east. But that will be a chat for another day. So that is it for this time on Theology Talks. So join me next week. We'll continue to delve a little bit deeper into the development of human consciousness, the communication between divine entities and physical reality. And as I mentioned, we might take a wee peek at some Eastern traditions, because we can always understand our faith better in light of someone else's. That's not me, that's Francis Clooney. So until next time, have a great week, and as always, happy reading.